Okay, people, I hope you're ready for yet another edition of the Midnight Skeptic, coming at you on this Wednesday, the 14th of September. It'll be on YouTube tonight and broadcast out to the unsuspecting world on Sunday, the 18th. So let's get right to the play-in music. You are listening to KPCA LP, Petaluma, California, at 103.3 FM and worldwide at www.kpca.fm. And this is the Midnight Skeptic. The views of the Midnight Skeptic are not, repeat, not necessarily the views of KPCA or any of its affiliates. Okay, as the intro and the music behind it said, my views, although they're the correct views to have for everybody, are not necessarily the views of Petaluma Community Access. But I'm thoroughly convinced that my friends and the people who work down at Petaluma Community Access share most of my views. They just want to express them in such midnight skeptiness. Okay. I have a thing to riff about before I start my shout-outs. It was asked of me, do you call everybody that disagrees with you a MAGA head? Yeah, pretty much. But it's more than just disagreement. Disagreement means, to me, when I'm having a discussion with a Republican, I believe it or not, I do have a few Republican friends and one or two Republican relatives. And when we're discussing things that really should be discussed, you know, the size of the government, the size of the national debt, all of those things. What sort of regulations should be imposed upon businesses? Those are the classic conservative Republican talking points. There really is no Republican Party anymore, except for a small handful of what I would call honorable, thoughtful, intelligent Republicans. The rest of them who go around disparaging people in the LGBTQ community or try to get books banned from school districts. Those are just MAGA heads. And, you know, I'm living here in California. That's not a real problem, although there have been efforts by MAGA heads to take over some school districts down in the Southern California area, down around LA. But it's just not a big deal up here in Northern California. And we do have MAGA heads in some of the more rural areas of California that are infused with right-wing, non-thinking, rural types that you would run across in Alabama or Mississippi. Okay, I repeat again, the Midnight Skeptic is proudly woke, W-O-K-E. And I've gone into the origin of that term and how it's been usurped by, I'm having a brain freeze on this guy that is an advisor to the Republican Party candidates, works for the Manhattan Institute. It'll pop into my head, but I've done a segment on him, and I'm going to do another one in the very near future. Okay, enough of all that. Okay, shout-outs. Anchor, .fm, and Spotify, thank you both for shooting me all around the world. And I do have a handful of followers in the EU and New Zealand and Australia, 2 or 3 each in those countries. But I'm most proud of having my 3 listeners in Canada who listen more or less regularly, I guess. I don't know. It just, the Anchor.fm compendium of listeners just mentions 3 Canada. Okay. And actually 1 in Russia as well. Okay, enough of that. International. Locally, here in Petaluma, Nariman, Cody and Keith, Tom and Nancy, down in Tiburon, Dennis and Megan, and in Sebastopol, Rich and Kathy Berger, and Pacifica, Stan and Kathy Gustafson, and then Susan Miller. I'd like to meet her sometime and just see how lefty she really is. According to Stan, she is pretty left-wing and progressive and liberal and blah, blah, blah. I consider myself a proud libtard in addition to being woke. I don't know if any other of my lefty friends appreciate being called libtard, but names are names, and sticks and stones will break my bones, and blah, 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 blah. Okay. In San Francisco, Yvonne Santos listens every now and then, and down in L.A., Jackie and Wayne Kolar, and then her 2 daughters, Samantha and Melanie. Every once in a while, they listen in. And back up in Katati, Kevin and Lori, and then over to Sacramento, Dave and Rosie Takach. And then Mickey Huff is up there. And please, if you have time, sign up for his projectcensored.org and just see what all that site has to offer. But the main thing is the newsletter. I think it comes out once a week. And down in Arizona, Brandon and Vicky, Andrea and Tim, and their 3 little terrorists, and their words, not mine. Okay, up in Sonora, Bob and Sandy Fisher and Martha and Brad Fisher. Martha, take care of yourself. Wear your PPE. And then Kathy Francis, Darrell Larson, Judy May, Leonidas Maciel, and Tiffany and Jennifer Gleason, and their dad, John Gleason. And then down in Mexico City, Rosamalia Lopez Negrete. She, on my Facebook, sends up postings, and usually it's in Spanish, and that really taxes my limited Spanish knowledge to try to, understand what it is that she's sending. Okay, in Arkansas, Shannon Reed. Down in Florida, Amelia Beamer, and then Nelson and Alice Lydell. Nelson, ex-Sonoraite. And in North Carolina, in the Raleigh-Durham area, Dr. Dave Rubin, and then up to Long Island, Geraldine Goldfinger. All right, that's the shout-outs. And I hope I didn't take too long doing that. Okay, I promised my thousands and thousands of listeners that I would start out with good news and end with good news, and then try to find as many bits of good news as I could. Okay, first thing, a Virginia judge dismisses a case brought by MAGA Head Republican politicians to stop bookstores from selling 2 specific books that were mentioned in this case. Stop selling them to minors. Okay, I guess the definition of minors is anybody that's less than 18 years old. And of course, you probably guessed which one of the books was mentioned by name. Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe. She's living up in the Santa Rosa area now, I think, and she's either 32 or 33. I really would like to meet her and have her as a guest on this show to explain a few things about her life growing up here in rural Petaluma, and whether she feels honored to have her book, Genderqueer, as the most banned book in 2021. Okay, book number 2 was A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas, M-A-A-S. That's a new one to me. I have not read it, and this is the first time that I've run across that title. But I intend to at least, get it somewhere to look at it. I don't know what it is all about. But, Maya Kobabe's book is not pornographic, and it's kind of, in parts, a bit heart-wrenching about the trials and tribulations of entering adolescence. And her parents are quite loving parents, and there's just seeking her identity. And adolescence is tough enough without having questions about your identity and who you are sexually attracted to, if anybody. And that's what this book is about. And please go out and get this. It's a graphic novel, and it's very well done. She got her art degree down in Dominican College here in Santa Fe, just down the street a ways. Okay. All right. Good news. If this gets results. Okay. This Thursday, well, that's tomorrow. I'm recording this on Wednesday, the 14th. But this Thursday, September 15th, the U.S. House Committee on Oversight and Reform, and I'm not sure who's on it, it will hold its next hearing on big oil's decades of climate disinformation. We'll hear from scientists who will provide context for the extreme weather and public health harms that fossil fuel-driven climate change and pollution are causing around the world, not just in this country, but around the world. Exxon's own scientist warns of this in the late 60s and early 70s. And I mentioned this on a number of shows earlier in the, quote unquote, career of the Midnight Skeptic when I was first starting this show back in 2017. Way back when I started this show, I concentrated mostly on the things that the skeptical community concentrate on. Ghosts and crop circles and UFOs, now called UAPs, cryptids, which are these creatures that only a few jerks have ever run across, allegedly, like Bigfoot or Chupacabra down in New Mexico and in northern Mexico, and things like that. Psychics and things that the skeptical community worries about, and fake psychics. Susan Gerbic down in the skeptics community down in Monterey. She's the one that really sets these traps for fake celebrity psychics that purport to contact the other side. Anyway, that's what I talked about, and I've kind of lost interest in those things. What I do talk about occasionally as a skeptic is, and I'll be talking about it a little bit in this segment of the Midnight Skeptic, is complementary and alternative medicine. The skeptics community actually in that regard functions as a consumer protection agency, and the CFI, Center for Inquiry, which is back in Amherst, New York, they have a lawsuit that's going on right now against Walmart and, brain freeze time, a drugstore chain, CVS. Whew, man, I hate brain freezes, but I get them periodically. Okay. Anyway, Walmart and CVS, who were displaying homeopathic drugs right next to the real FDA-approved drugs. You know, like if you were a customer going in there to find some medication for a headache, for instance, well, you'd look at Tylenol and Advil, and then something that's probably not very familiar to you right next to them, which is a homeopathic remedy. And I'm telling all my listeners right now, homeopathic medicines are unscientific BS. And I can't say what BS stands for over the air, but you get what I mean. Okay, that's what I concentrated on a little bit later in the career on radio of the Midnight Skeptic. And then I started talking more about environmental issues, pollution, and especially CO2 increasing levels in the atmosphere, which in turn heats up the atmosphere, which in turn creates these wild heat waves and increased power in hurricanes, rising sea levels, and all that sort of thing, which I still like to do occasionally. But since the 2016 election of the orange sociopathic bloat bag, I've been concentrating more and more on the damage to our country that MAGA heads are doing. And Republican MAGA heads, if we let Republican MAGA heads take over our government, I'm telling you, it's going to be a horrible dystopia. I might just take off myself, which I'm just blathering. I won't really, but Denmark and Sweden and Norway are just looking better and better. Okay. I'm off my notes, as you can probably tell yet again. Okay. Where was I? Oh, yeah. But I warned that Exxon's own scientists presented a paper to the CEO and other executives of Exxon, and they said that, all of these fossil fuels that are being burnt are going to cause the atmosphere to warm with all of its attendant bad news for the whole planet. Well, that's a whole new thing. This was before Exxon and Mobil merged. Now they're Exxon Mobil, and one of their lying ass CEOs is going to come testify tomorrow in front of the House Committee on Oversight and Reform, and I'm not sure who the Democratic Congress people are that's on this committee. You can just discount the MAGA heads that are on the committee. They will just go through the motions and offer puffball questions to all the big oil CEOs that are going to be testifying. Okay. More good news. Okay, sanctuary cities for undocumented immigrants have lower crime rates than non-sanctuaries counties or cities. Contrary to lies from the MAGA heads, the orange sociopathic bloat bag, you remember when he, in late 2015, early 2016, I don't remember exactly when he started his campaign. He was in Trump Tower, and he came down that escalator and then gave a speech about how Mexico is not sending their best, criminals, drug dealers, blah, 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 and we should do something about immigration. Well, sanctuary cities, and they're invariably run by progressive liberal Democrats, have a lower crime rate than cities or counties that are not sanctuary cities or counties. Okay. I'm off my notes again. Bloatbag's claims from the get-go, when he came down the escalator, have been proven wrong. Everything he said about immigrants, especially from Latin America and Mexico, have been proven wrong. Crime statistics indicate that sanctuary cities are more crime-free than non-sanctuary cities. New immigrants, whether they're documented or not, they tend to want to keep as low a profile as possible and not break any laws. Okay. All right. I need a sip, and this is grape juice. Okay, this is kind of bad news. Now that Queen Elizabeth has passed away, may she rest in peace, her son Charles has ascended the throne as Charles III. He is, for the most part, a good environmentalist, but be warned, he has, for decades, been an uncritical, misguided promoter of unproven and unscientific alternative and complementary medicines. This is according to Paul Benedetti, a recently retired professor of journalism and critical thinking at University of Western Ontario. Benedetti reviews the recent book, and this is the title of it, Charles, The Alternative Prince, an unauthorized biography by Dr. Edzard Ernst. And who is he? Okay, the former chair of the complementary medicine department at the University of Exeter over in England. Ernst and 20 researchers in his department vigorously investigated all aspects of alternative medicine and has published more research papers than any other institution in the world on complementary and alternative medicine, or CAM. From chiropractic to traditional Chinese medicine, study after study demonstrated that CAM failed in terms of both safety and efficacy. A lot of it, meaning the various CAM modalities, were actually kind of dangerous. Charles has championed most of these CAM modalities, but has not been able to get any of them into the British National Health System, or the NHS. Okay. Thank goodness the NHS is a science-based medical system. The UK's, England, the UK's Good Thinking Society's Michael Marshall says, the Good Thinking Society is kind of the British equivalent of the Skeptic Society, although they do have skeptic societies over there. This is something separate, but I'm sure that they believe more or less the same things. Where was I? The UK's Good Thinking Society's Michael Marshall says, we have helped shift the needle on how accepting the British public is of homeopathy. It seems we've won the battle for hearts and minds. Okay, boy, I hope that statement doesn't come back to bite him on the butt, but it's looking up over there. Now, if we can just do the same thing with homeopathy over here in the States. Okay, and he goes on. This is Michael Marshall. If Prince Charles wants to have a genuine positive effect on the health of the nation he intends to one day rule, he should side against those who offer dangerously misleading advice rather than fighting in their corner. Now, he wrote this about a month ago. This is before Queen Elizabeth passed away and Charles ascended the throne. Okay. Now on sort of this same vein, a time check. Okay, I've been blathering for about a half an hour now. Okay, more from a longtime skeptic, and who I've met this lady at two skeptics conferences down in Las Vegas that I attended. The last one, this is before the COVID-19 outbreak. I attended the one in 2017 and 2018, and I met this lady and had a brief conversation with her. Okay. Dr. Harriet Hall, Hall. She's a physician and writer and blogger of the column SkepDoc. She was an Air Force doctor, a flight surgeon, and then when she got out of the Air Force, she started private practice as a pediatrician, and then she began writing this column, blog, called SkepDoc, SkepDoc. Look it up. I mean, it's, if you want to know the real deal from a well-trained, experienced physician about complementary and alternative medicines like homeopathy, she talks about that and much, much more. Okay, and this is a quote from her, Dr. Harriet Hall. The perhaps worst thing is that Charles is proud of being called the enemy of the Enlightenment. Now, I don't know who called him that. That's in quotes in her quote, and she doesn't say who called him that, and I have no evidence, and I don't think that she is either, about whether he's actually proud of that or not. But that's what she says in this quote. Going on with Harriet Hall, he is clearly anti-science. He calls for more research into alternative medicine, but he doesn't mean what we mean by research. He doesn't want research to ask if a treatment works or is effective. He wants, quote unquote, his type of research to demonstrate that it is effective and that it would save money, which it would not, according to Dr. Hall. That's what that's one of the things that's wrong with complementary and alternative medicine, such as homeopathic doctors, naturopathic doctors, chiropractic doctors, osteopathic doctors. When their treatments are, quote unquote, researched, they're researched by other practitioners of those types of medicines, and it's not real research. It's, how can I put this? It's, well, let me just do this. Okay. Randomized double-blinded studies by an outside study group, medical study group, is just not something that complementary and alternative medical practitioners submit their quote-unquote treatments to. It's just, okay, enough of that right now. Okay, bad news. Hasidic schools in New York have received more than $1.6 billion in taxpayer funding, while systematically denying students a basic education. These yeshivas, the majority of their school day is taken up with studying the Jewish texts. Now, I'm not anti-Jewish any more than I'm anti any other religion. That is to say, all religions are, well, first of all, misogynistic, and all religions, are bunk. Okay, I'm an agnostic. I would call myself an atheist, and just like Ron Reagan says, a lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell. Okay, so I'm not anti-Jewish in that I dislike their religion any more than I dislike other religions. It's just a matter of degree of the harm that certain religions do to their followers. Okay, now I'm telling you that schools in the Hasidic school system in New York shouldn't be getting money from the government, from the taxpayers, in order to just indoctrinate them into the Jewish text. The Hasidic leaders have built scores of private schools to educate children in Jewish law, prayer, and traditions, and to wall them off, them being the students, and to wall the students off from the secular world. Very little English and math is offered, and no science or history. Students are drilled relentlessly, sometimes brutally. Spanking and other forms of corporal punishment are used in these Hasidic schools, sometimes brutally, during hours of religious lessons conducted in Yiddish. Okay. The schools are operating in violation of state laws, New York state laws, that guarantee children an adequate education. The Hasidic boys' schools have found ways of tapping into government sums of government money. My notes are a bit jumbled here. Collecting more than $1 billion over the last 4 years. Okay. Now, are Hasidic schools any worse than schools that are privately run, religious schools that are Christian run? It's just a matter of degree. Fundamentalist Christian schools also don't want real science taught in the schools, like evolution, for instance, and they don't want CRT to be taught either. In other words, the real history of the United States. Another sip. Okay, so it's just a matter of degree. Hasidic schools in New York should be cut off from taxpayer money. Okay, of course they would never go for that, and by and large, the Hasidim, that's the plural, meaning the Hasidic people, have been reliable, progressive, Democratic voters. And if Governor Kathy Hochul or the mayor of New York City were to cut them off from their monies, they would either not vote or vote for MAGA heads. I mean, the Hasidic realize that the vast majority of MAGA head Republicans are just anti-Jewish bigots. Okay. All right. Enough of that for right now. Good news. The cases against many of the 19 victims of Governor Ron DeSantis, who is Bloatbag Jr., voter. Okay, let me restart this. The cases against many of the 19 victims of Governor Ron DeSantis' voter fraud Gestapo police are beginning to fall apart. There were no good cases anyway. The former felons did not intend to vote illegally, and the length of jail time for a typical voter fraud case in Florida, and there are very few, has been a slap on the wrist, a fine, or a community service. Now, I'm talking about the rare, other voter fraud cases in Florida, which were committed by retirees. Okay, last winter, 4 residents of a MAGA Head GOP leaning retirement community, the Villages, were arrested for voting twice. 2 of these 4 had to take a civics class. Oh my God, that's going to take up time, At least they didn't have to go to jail. The other 2 cases are pending right now. And I said this on the last show and then the show before that. These DeSantis originally claimed that my voter fraud police have arrested 20. Well, it's actually 19. And one of the arrests utilized a SWAT team to go wake this guy up early in the morning, and this dangerous voter, well, he was an ex-felon. So, he believed, according to the Florida State, registrar of voters, who sent him a card, a voter registration card, that he could vote. Okay, well, guns drawn, body armor worn, they went to his house, knocked on the door. Come out, come out. We'll shoot if you don't come out with your hands up. We're the voter police. Okay, enough of that. Good news. Okay, PEN America, PEN, is celebrating 100 years of advocating for the written word and freedom of speech, values that MAGA Head Republicans do not share. Witness the continuing efforts by Republicans to ban books from schools and public libraries. Well, I already mentioned a couple of them earlier in the show. PEN, and I think this is an acronym. I'm not sure what PEN stands for. No, I don't, but it's a PEN. It's a writers group. Okay, PEN coined the term educational gag orders. That's good. This term, educational gag orders, perfectly describes efforts in red states to diseducate, and that's my term, diseducate school kids to America's actual history and to the very existence of others who identify as gender or sexual nonconforming people to mainstream society. Suzanne Nessel, Nessel, she is PEN's CEO since 2013, warns us about the erosion of free speech as a cultural value. Okay, snark alert. Pretty soon, MAGA heads will be calling for fatwas against authors of books about minorities or the LGBTQ communities, such as the attack on Salman Rushdie, directed by the Ayatollah Khomeini. Remember him? For his Salman Rushdie's book, 1989 book, The Satanic Verses. And I've not read that, but the claims are from militant Islamic terrorists that it's blasphemous. Blasphemy is a term that, if you're accused of it, can get you killed in Arab countries. And, okay, blasphemy here. There is no God. It's doubtful whether there was a real historical character named Jesus. And Christian religion has done more harm to this world than all of the godless dictators that ever existed. Okay, blasphemy, I'm guilty. All right, so if there's any Southern Baptist hitmen out there that have heard this, come get me. You know where I am. Well, actually, they probably don't know where I am, which is just as well. Okay. I'm off my notes again. Snark alert. Okay. The first meeting of the Pen Club, that was its original name before it changed to Pen America. I'm not sure when that happened. Okay. The first meeting of the Pen Club took place at the Coffee House Club in Manhattan. I'm not sure where that is. 40 members came, including Willa Cather, Eugene O'Neill, and Robert Frost. The Pen Club held an emergency writers' congress in 1939. Okay. I got to use these sound effects more and more. I've been neglecting to do that. And a lot of the things that I've said over the years that I've been doing this required this. Okay. The Pen Club held an emergency writers' congress in 1939 to respond to the rising fascism in Europe. Okay, here's snark alert number 2. Maybe Penn should have another emergency writers' congress to respond to rising MAGA fascism here in America. That's just a heartfelt suggestion to the members of Pen America. All right. Good news, and I'm winding down here toward the end. Good news. The second Alex Jones trial began in Waterbury, Connecticut, to make him pay yet again for him spreading lies about the Sandy Hook shooting. He was dinged for about $47 million at the trial down in Texas, where he was, found guilty of spreading lies and punitive damages and actual damages to the Sandy Hook families. I think there were 2 families that brought suit against him in Texas. Well, there's a second trial in Waterbury, Connecticut that's just beginning, and undoubtedly he will be found guilty again and dinged for some more money. Okay. And here's the last thing I have in my notes. This is maybe good news. Lindsey Graham, the senator of Republican senator, MAGA Head senator of South Carolina, introduced a bill in Congress, in the Senate, to ban all abortions countrywide, nationwide, after 15 weeks. It won't pass. And the reason I say that this could be news is that Mitch McConnell, when asked about this, said that it is the stance of the Republican Party that such decisions, like abortion, should be left to the states. Okay, well, there's a divisive split in the Republican Party. I don't know how many co-sponsors Lindsey Graham has for introducing this bill into the Senate, but anything that splits the Republican Party apart and pits MAGA head against MAGA head, I consider that to be good news. All right. That's the end of my notes. Okay. Here's a few things that I want to say here. I always do this. I never have enough notes to actually fill up 58 minutes, although on occasion I have run over. But lately, I've been not quite filling up the whole 58 minutes. And I say 58 minutes because that's how much time I actually get from KPCALP 103.3 FM. They've got to fit in their own announcements. It's a public, commercial-free radio station. U.S. cases of voter fraud are infinitesimal. And, I mean, all knowledgeable, thinking, rational people know that there was not and is not a big thing about voter fraud in this country. Forget what the orange sociopathic bloat bag says or any of his MAGA head followers say. There's just not. Okay. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, a Republican, has encouraged a show no mercy approach to voter fraud during his re-election campaign. But many of those cases seem to already be falling apart. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier. But this goes into a bit more detail than I did. Falling apart. A review by the New York Times of some 400 voting fraud charges filed nationwide since 2007 underscores what critics of fraud crackdowns have long said. Actual prosecutions are blue moon events and often netted people who didn't realize they were breaking the law. Most fraud cases fall into one of four categories: falsely filling out absentee ballots, usually to vote in the name of a relative. Okay, voting twice, like those retirees down in the villages in Florida. Voting twice, usually in two states after they've moved somewhere. Usually votes cast illegally by felons or votes cast by non-citizens. All four categories are quite rare, and usually these voter fraud cases, as rare as they are, were just committed by mistake or confusion, or in the case of Florida, confusion around whether ex-felons can vote or not. And the election officials in Florida themselves sent these ex-felons who had done their time and were released voter registration cards. They were under the impression that they could vote. But Ron DeSantis, the big macho governor, is going to crack down on these criminals. The number of individuals charged with voting fraud, roughly 1.5 per state per year, is infinitesimal in a country where more than 160 million votes were cast in the 2020 general election. So, voter fraud, non-existent. The orange sociopathic bloat bag is just beyond being a sore loser. He's just a loser. Okay. Let's see. What else? Oh, here's a short article about oath keepers and a membership list. Elected officials and police chiefs are on the membership list of the Oath Keepers. The names of hundreds of U.S. law enforcement officers, elected officials, and military members appear on the leaked membership rolls of a far-right extremist group that's accused of playing a key role in the January 6th, 2021 insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, according to a report released Wednesday. The Anti-Defamation League Center on Extremism poured over more than 38,000 names on leaked Oath Keepers membership lists and identified more than 370 people it believes currently work in law enforcement agencies, including as police chiefs and sheriffs, and more than 100 people who are currently members of the military. That should be a frightening fact for all of my thousands and thousands of listeners here. The reports of an impending civil war, I doubt if that will actually come to pass, but it's a danger to this country that oath keepers who are members of the military and police and sheriffs, they have the guns and they have the gun nuts in the Oath Keepers. Okay, enough. I got to play my out music. You have been listening to The Midnight Skeptic on KPCA LP, Petaluma, California. And we're at 103.3 on the FM dial and worldwide at www.kpca.fm. Support community radio at patreon.com/Petaluma Community Access. And remember, think critically, think logically, but live joyously, and most importantly, pet your cats. Okay, it's 58 minutes, and a couple of seconds, so I hit it right on the money. So I will do this again next week, and enjoy your upcoming weekend, and we will see you again, in roughly about a week. And listen in on Sunday night if you wish.